impairment publicly. But that Sussex LRC Fringe has a personal significance for me because they invited me to speak 5 years ago at the PCS Fringe, and it was the first time I'd ever spoken in public. It was because nobody else could do it, but I just felt it was important that somebody did it. But for me, it was a really big deal because I'd spent the previous 34 years of my life experiencing crippling social anxiety and also what was probably then had been diagnosed as selective mutism, but at the time it was viewed as being really, really difficult and to get paid off for it a lot. It's really embarrassing looking back, but at school I'd even hide under the desk if I got asked a question, and then the world of work was a complete nightmare for me. But DPAP changed a lot of things for me. It was through support and understanding from fellow disabled campaigners, but also from the wider labour movement and the LRC, that meant that I gradually became confident to do things that I never in my life dreamed I'd ever be able to do. So I'm always going to feel very positive and grateful towards Sussex LRC for changing my life, so I just want to say thank you. I'm going to talk about the wider struggle against oppression and injustice. And 5 years ago, I didn't think it would be possible that we could have the opportunity that we've got today, that we're presented with the opportunity of a Prime Minister who is openly committed to the many, not the few, and who unashamedly stands alongside the oppressed and the dispossessed. 5 years ago in my speech I spoke a lot about the betrayal of disabled people by New Labour, about their role in introducing ATOS and the work capability assessment, about the introduction of the pernicious narrative of malingering and that have done so much damage to the way that disabled people are perceived in society. But today what we've got a Labour Party manifesto that's been co-produced with deaf and disabled people, demands that we've been fighting for decades, such as a right to independent living enshrined in domestic legislation, around the rights under the Convention of the Rights of People with Disabilities, actually in domestic legislation as well. Those things are all there in black and white. The demands over which we battled so hard with the Labour front bench over, particularly around independent living and their refusal to commit to a national social care system which would be independent of the local authority. And I think they're failing to commit to that, cost Labour a lot of votes in the 2015 general election. That's in this year's Labour Party manifesto. The manifesto gives a commitment to the social model of disability and to overhauling the fundamentally flawed work capability assessment and PIP assessments, and shows a grasp and understanding of the deeper issues behind so-called welfare reform that I think puts to shame the overpaid policy advisors and CEOs of the national charities who continue to collude with the Department for Work and Pensions. The Labour Party manifesto is a milestone in disabled people's rights, but that's not something that anyone is going to hear from the mainstream media, and that means it's up to us to get out there and spread that message. And that's why I think it's so important that disabled campaigners in the few weeks that are left before the election are as active as possible, getting out there, going onto the streets where we can, engaging with the public, explaining why this election means so much to deaf and disabled people, to our families and our communities, and what the consequences will be if the Tories are re-elected on June the 8th. Because there's no question that another 5 years of Tory rule will make the lives of deaf and disabled people and our families unimaginably worse. May hasn't ruled out further disability benefit cuts. And meanwhile, their direction of travel for dismantling the social security system, replacing it with an insurance-based model, is all there in the Green Paper. The Green Paper came out at the beginning of this year. It's progressively couched as improving lives, the health, disability and work paper. The closure of job centres, which will affect PCS members, is just one part that's in there. One part of this agenda that's going to further restrict social security benefits. And it's all underpinned by this really sinister mantra that work is good for you, and therefore justifies cutting benefits and pushing people, regardless of impairment, into work. Rather than scrapping the notorious work capability assessment, and I don't know if any of you probably may well have seen that the latest tribunal figures show that around 68% of work capability decisions are being overturned on appeal at the moment. That shows there's something seriously wrong with the process. The government is not proposing to overhaul that. What they're going to do instead is introduce a new mandatory stage before the work capability assessment called the health and work conversation. That will be mandatory for everybody, and the idea behind that is that there are too many people now who are being found not fit for work. And so this is a way of making sure that everybody, regardless of impairment, is giving us a chance to get out there and to really build our wider movement. On the streets in Croydon, where I'm from and I grew up, I've been out with Croydon Disabled People Against Cuts and Stand Up to Racism over the past few weeks, and there's been like a real energy and excitement on the streets. We've been registering people to vote, but also we've been having conversations, particularly with young people, and I have to say having Stormzy, who's from Croydon, and the other grime artists like come out from Corbyn has really helped with that. But people who didn't even know what different political parties were before, they started engaging and talking about not just about who they vote for, but how they get involved wider and going forwards in political activity. So in many ways what we're seeing out on the streets is it feels like this is the beginning of something that's really quite exciting. And I think whatever the outcome of the election, having a stronger and more united movement is only going to be a good thing. We know that whoever is elected is not going to be politics as it was before, and we need to be ready for that. So comrades, onwards, solidarity.
Thanks very much to Ellen for that inspiring address.